As the billionaire stood at his mother's grave for the first time in years, he saw something that shocked him to the bone. A poor woman kneeling in the mud, her hands bleeding as she scrubbed the dirt and moss off his mother's gravestone. Rain soaked her dress, but she didn't flinch as she continued to scrub the gravestone like her life depended on it. Jaden, a man whose wealth could silence presidents, felt a chill crawl down his spine. His mother had died quietly years ago and left behind no close friends. Yet, here was a stranger, tending his mother's grave with a devotion that he, her only son, had never shown. He stepped forward, asking who she was, and the woman turned slowly, revealing her tear-filled face. Before Jaden could say another word, she dropped her rag and ran as fast as her legs could carry her. Jaden chased her through the cemetery, pleading to know who she was, but the woman vanished, leaving behind the traces of her memory in Jaden's mind. Who is this woman? And why was she cleaning the grave of the billionaire's mother? Sit back and relax as we delve into this captivating story together. Jaden was a man who had risen beyond the realms of ordinary wealth. At just 36, he was the silent force behind half of Lagos skyline, owning luxury hotels, shipping conglomerates, private airlines, and a diamond mining company in the north. His penthouses overlooked cities from New York to Dubai, and his fleet of cars were so vast that his drivers joked that they needed a calendar just to schedule which of the cars that he would use on each day. Presidents courted his influence, governors deferred to his decisions, and entire industries bent to his investments. Yet, despite his towering empire, Jaden lived alone, his life defined by boardroom meetings, contracts, and an endless pursuit of power. He had not visited his mother's grave since her funeral, so that day, when he decided to visit, he stood there frozen to see a strange woman cleaning his mother's grave. Before Jaden could ask who she was, she dropped her rag and ran as fast as her legs could carry her. Jaden chased her through the cemetery, pleading to know who she was, but the woman vanished, leaving behind the traces of her memory in Jaden's mind. He returned to his car and ordered his driver to circle the streets close to the cemetery. The rain fell harder as Jaden stared out of the tinted window, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. But after hours of driving around, the strange woman was nowhere to be found. Jaden returned home, but his mind was not home with him. He stayed in the cemetery, in the rain, staring at the faceless woman who scrubbed his mother's gravestone with her bare hands. For days, he could not shake her image off his mind. He replayed that fleeting moment over and over again, as if each rewind would reveal a clue that he had missed, a detail in her face, a sound in her voice, something to tell him why she was there. And Jaden wasn't the kind of man to sit back and wonder. No, he moved mountains when he wanted answers. He went back to the cemetery the next morning, and the days after that. 2 weeks passed, and every morning, rain or shine, Jaden stood by his mother's grave, waiting, hoping. He even hired men, ex-soldiers, private investigators, and night guards, paying them more than they've ever seen in their lives just to keep watch. But the woman never came back. At night, her memories haunted him instead. He dreamt of her, turning, her tear-filled eyes locking onto his. In those dreams, she always tried to speak, but the words never came, only silence. And then she would vanish, leaving Jaden alone in the dark. He brought in a sketch artist, desperate to put a face to the ghost in his mind, but no matter how many times he described her, the curve of her jaw, the shape of her eyes, the sadness in her face, the sketches always looked wrong, like they were drawing a stranger. Months slipped by, and Jaden did all he could to focus on his work. The world thought he was as powerful as ever, but behind closed doors he was obsessed, not with deals, not with profit, but with this single nameless woman, tied somehow to his dead mother. Then one stormy afternoon, Nearly 6 months after their first encounter, Jaden found himself at the cemetery again. Maybe it was guilt, maybe fate, maybe something else. But as he walked towards the gravestone, something stopped him dead in his tracks. It was the woman, kneeling by his mother's grave as she uprooted the weeds that had grown around the grave. For the first time in years, Jaden felt a chill run down his spine, a deep, unsettling chill that no amount of wealth could shield him from. His mother had died quietly, with no fanfare, no friends left to mourn her. He was her only son, and yet this stranger showed more devotion to her memory than he ever did. Jaden stepped forward and asked who she was again, and the woman stood up and began to run. Jaden was not willing to lose her this time. He chased her into the road, and before he knew what was happening, she was hit by a moving vehicle. Jaden stood there frozen, his hand stretched out as if it could stop the accident from happening, his eyes wide open as he watched the young woman fall to the ground with a sickening thud. The car tire screeched as the driver sped off, leaving her there on the street. Jaden rushed to her side, his hands trembling as he lifted her gently. Blood trickled down her forehead, mixing with the rain as her eyes fluttered weakly. She looked at him once, just once, with that same sorrowful gaze that she wore at the grave. Then everything went dark. Jaden did not think. He scooped her into his arms and shouted at his driver to take them to his private clinic, one that his fortune had built, but he never had a reason to use. Hours later, he sat by her hospital bed, his heart racing as he blamed himself for her situation. The doctors told him that she would survive. However, there was a catch. The accident had left her with severe memory loss. She didn't know who she was, where she came from, or why she had been at his mother's grave in the first place. When she finally woke up, her eyes searched the entire room, confused and frightened. She could not speak, whether from trauma or something deeper. The doctors were not sure, but her silence no longer felt deliberate. It felt empty, like a soul stripped bare of its element. Jaden leaned closer, his voice softer than it had ever been. "Don't be afraid. I'll take care of you from now on," he said to the strange woman, who looked at him weakly. Her eyes carried a weight that words could not describe. From that moment, Jaden made the decision, one that he had never made for anyone, not even his family. He moved her into his penthouse, sparing no cost to make her life comfortable. He hired specialists, memory therapists, and even neurologists to help her find her voice, her past, and her identity. But every session ended the same. She would sit quietly, eyes vacant, fingers clutching the thin blanket around her as if it were her only anchor. Days turned into weeks, and Jaden found himself doing something he had sworn never to do. He let someone into his heart. It wasn't sudden, it crept in slowly. He bought her elegant gowns, sent her to the finest salons, surrounded her with luxuries fit for royalty, not because she asked, but because he needed to erase the image of her, kneeling in the mud, bleeding hands, scrubbing his mother's forgotten grave, and still she said nothing. At night, Jaden would find himself wandering the halls, pausing at her doorstep. Sometimes he'd find her standing on the balcony, staring out into the city. His feelings deepened into something dangerous. The man who built empires now found himself building walls in his own mind, terrified of what the truth might be. One evening, over a glass of whiskey, his best friend confronted him. "Jaden, what if she's not just some stranger? What if she's connected to you more than you think? What if she's your sister?" He asked Jaden, whose stomach tightened at the thought of it. He had wondered it himself, the devotion she showed to his mother's grave, the sorrow in her eyes when she looked at him, the mystery surrounding her very existence. Could she really be his sister? But then, as he stood in the dark, staring at her on the balcony, a chill swept over him, because no matter how hard he tried to bury the thought, No matter how much it terrified him, he knew that he was not just protecting her, he was falling in love with her, far too deep than he ever imagined. Days passed, and Jaden decided to give her a name. He could not watch her exist without a name. He called her Catherine, and for the first time in days, she smiled, a smile that lightened Jaden's heart. He moved closer to her, happy to see her smile, as Catherine, for the first time since they met, thanked him for saving her life. She could not remember her life before the accident, but she remembered him. She remembered his hand pulling her from the cold, his voice whispering to her in the hospital room, telling her not to be afraid. In her mind, Jaden was her anchor, her only constant in a sea of empty memories. That night, for the first time since she came into his life, Catherine spoke again. "You saved me," she said, her voice soft and calm. Jaden's chest tightened as he heard her speak, and although he wanted to press her for more about the grave, about his mother, about who she really was, he could not bring himself to do so, not when she had lost all her memory. So he let it go, at least for the moment. In the days that followed, Catherine's presence became the center of Jaden's world. He took her to quiet gardens, private beaches, and the finest restaurants, and the more he did so, the more he fell deeply in love with her. However, something gnawed inside his heart. The thought that Catherine might be his biological sister. His nights were filled with worry, and his days were filled with longing. Every time Catherine's soft eyes met his, every time she smiled faintly and reached for his hand, when fear gripped her, Jaden felt a pull that he could not fight. Yet at night, lying awake in his empty bedroom, his mind echoed with one terrifying question: what if she's my sister? Jaden could not shake the thoughts that haunted his soul. His mother was a very calm and loyal woman who loved his father with all of her heart. She never seemed to him like a woman who would step out of her marriage to have a child with another man. It didn't make sense. His mother, the calm gentlewoman who spent her life serving and loving his father, had never once hinted at such a secret. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't unfaithful. She was in Jaden's mind, the one person who held their broken family together when his father's temper and drinking nearly tore it apart. And yet, here he was, unable to explain who this beautiful stranger was and why she made it her duty to clean his mother's grave. Worse still, he was in love with her and didn't know what to do. He decided to run a DNA test to ascertain if Catherine was his biological sister. However, he feared the outcome of this revelation, knowing that he was already in love with her. Jaden moved with the precision of a man who handled billion-dollar deals on a daily. But that night, his hands trembled as he took a single strand of Catherine's hair from her hairbrush and placed it carefully into an envelope. He told himself that this was the only way to end the torment clawing at his mind, to know the truth before he went any deeper into the kind of love that could shatter their lives. The test was arranged quietly through a private lab that he trusted, a facility that handled the secrets of politicians and top executives. They promised him discretion as well as absolute confidentiality. Jaden returned home worried, his chest tightened as so many thoughts ran through his mind. For the next 3 days, time moved like a snail. Catherine, oblivious to what was happening, continued to live her life in the mansion. She loved to cook and spent the greater part of her time in the kitchen, trying out different meals. Jaden would sit in his office as he admired her through his CCTV, and Catherine had no idea that he was watching. He watched her slice vegetables happily, dancing to the song that was playing on the television. Every little thing about her fascinated him greatly. However, behind that fascination stood a fear so great that it lingered like a shadow. Jaden could not stop thinking about the DNA. The thought haunted him like a plague, and Jaden prayed for time to move slower. He spent his time monitoring Catherine, who he found to be clumsy and cute. She slit her finger one afternoon as Jaden watched from the comfort of his office. Instead of remaining calm, Jaden returned home with a whole medical team to treat a single cut on her thumb. He even went further to hire someone whose duty was to cut anything that needed to be cut. Jaden banned Catherine from ever using a knife. He could not stand anything happening to her, and Catherine could not help but notice that Jaden was in love with her. She too had fallen deeply in love with the man who saved her when death came knocking on that fateful night. Although she couldn't remember the details of her previous life, she loved this exact life that she was living with a man who was not only rich and handsome, but also willing to move mountains for her, despite not knowing who she truly was. One evening, as the sun set behind the city skyline, a black Lamborghini screeched to a halt at the gate. Out stepped Vanessa, Jaden's ex-girlfriend, the woman who once paraded through the city as if she owned it all because she had Jaden. Tall, striking, draped in designer from head to toe, Vanessa was fury, wrapped in elegance. Word had reached her that Jaden, the man she thought no one could ever replace, had taken in a nameless stray and was spoiling her like royalty. Vanessa stormed into the mansion, her heels echoing against the marble like warning bells. She found Catherine in the living room, curled up quietly with a book. No jewelry, no makeup, just a simple dress Jaden had picked for her. Vanessa's lips curled on sighting her. So this is the girl, she scoffed, circling Catherine like a hawk. The woman who has stolen my man. Look at you. Do you even know how to hold a wine glass? Or are you too busy cutting vegetables and bleeding all over the place? Catherine's hands trembled, though she said nothing. The sting of Vanessa's words cut deeper than any blade. Before Vanessa could continue, a voice boomed from the stairway. Vanessa, what are you doing here? Jaden asked as he descended down the stairs, his gaze sharp and his presence enough to make Vanessa pause. He walked past her without a glance, straight to Catherine, who he asked if she was fine. Vanessa, Catherine here is not just some girl who you can talk down on, Jaden said, his tone cold like ice. She's the woman I love, and I won't condone you talking down on her. Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. Yours? Jaden, she's a nobody. She doesn't even know who she is. You're throwing away everything for a nameless stray? She asked Jaden, who burst out in anger. For someone who treats me like a man? Jaden said to her as he cut her off. His voice did not rise, but the weight behind his words were crushing. Leave, Vanessa. You don't belong here anymore. Not in my house. Not in my life, he said to Vanessa, whose face twisted in anger. The pride she wore like armor cracking as she looked at Catherine one last time, her voice dripping with venom. Enjoy it while it lasts. Men like Jaden don't stay with men like you forever, she said mockingly, as Jaden did not even let her finish. He motioned to security, and in a moment, Vanessa was escorted out of the mansion, her heels clicking furiously as she was walked back to her car, a car that Jaden bought for her as a gift before she threw everything away. Vanessa could nerve with her friends to test Jaden's loyalty. However, this was the final straw that broke the camel's back. You see, moments before Jaden ever met Catherine, Vanessa decided to play a dangerous game. She and her equally wealthy friends set up a test for Jaden, something they thought would be amusing, a way to prove that they had power over the most powerful billionaire in Lagos. Vanessa thought she was clever. She faked the pregnancy, using the lie to siphon millions from Jaden, knowing that he secretly longed to be a father, even more than he longed for more wealth. She cried fake tears, whispered how much she wanted their family, and every month she fabricated ultrasound scans, each one photoshopped by one of her scheming friends. But Vanessa did not stop there. She staged emotional breakdowns, calling Jaden during board meetings, claiming she felt the baby kicking and needed him immediately, forcing him to abandon billion-dollar deals to hold her hand. Each time, she smiled behind his back, telling her friends that even the Lagos king dances when she pulls the strings. Her games grew darker as each day passed. One evening, After months of faking her pregnancy, she told Jaden that she lost the baby. Jaden was so devastated. He didn't show up at work for over a week as he blamed himself for the miscarriage. Vanessa informed him that his delay in securing a better house for her led to her miscarriage. She told Jaden that she tripped down the stairs and that if Jaden had gotten her the house that she requested, all this would not have happened. Jaden lived with the guilt for weeks, doing everything within his power to pacify Vanessa, who used this as an avenue to demand for outrageous things. Jaden, being a billionaire, provided everything that she asked for and even more. However, on one night, whilst Vanessa was discussing the fake pregnancy with her friends, Jaden arrived at her house and overheard everything. Vanessa laughed with her friends, swelling her champagne as she boasted, "Do you know how easy it is to make a man like Jaden crawl? All it took was a fake bump and a few crocodile tears. The fool wired millions to my account every month, even bought me that Lamborghini I wanted, just because I told him I needed to feel safe for the baby. And when I faked the miscarriage, oh, the drama. He nearly shut down his entire empire for me. I could make him do anything," she said as Jaden stood there frozen. It was as if his heart was being ripped out of his chest. Jaden had never felt this heartbroken in his entire life. He stood there for some minutes as Vanessa's voice echoed in his mind, crushing a part of his heart that he had guarded so desperately. He simply turned around and left, finally knowing the true color of the woman who he almost married. The man who once built empires out of fire and steel now built walls around his heart. That was the day Jaden walked away from Vanessa without a single word of explanation. He blocked her calls, froze the accounts that he opened for her, and Vanessa did everything possible to get him back. Screaming, begging, threatening, she even staged a fainting spell at his office gate, but Jaden never looked back. And now, as she stood on the marble floor of his mansion, glaring at Catherine like a predator, sizing up prey, she realized her power over him had completely evaporated. The man who she once controlled was gone, replaced by someone colder, sharper, someone who no longer saw her as a queen, but as a lesson. Inside the mansion, Jaden wrapped his arm gently around Catherine, who leaned into him silently, still unsure of her own past, but certain of one thing, that the man holding her would protect her at all costs. As they sat there, Jaden's phone buzzed in his hand. It was a message from the private lab. The DNA result was ready, and Jaden had to pick it up from the lab. Jaden's chest tightened at the thought of it. His hand froze as he stared at his phone, knowing that what lay behind that result could either be the end or beginning of something beautiful. Jaden drove to the private lab alone. Each turn of the wheel felt heavier, and every beat of his heart echoed like a drum in his ears. He had faced billion-dollar crises, stared down presidents, and walked into rooms filled with men who would kill for profit, but never had his hands trembled like this. When he arrived, the receptionist immediately ushered him into a private room. A man in a white coat stepped forward, holding an envelope in his hand. "Mr. Jaden, the result you requested." Jaden's fingers brushed the paper, cold sweat on his palm. For a moment, he could not bring himself to open it. He imagined two futures. One where Catherine was his sister, forcing him to walk away from the only woman who he had ever loved. And another where she wasn't, where he could finally let himself love her without guilt. Finally, Jaden tore the envelope open. His eyes scanned the document, heart racing so fast that he drowned out every sound in the room. Then he stopped, read it again and again. She was not his sister, no biological relation whatsoever. A breath escaped his lips, shaky and long. Relief, sharp and almost dizzying, washed over him. His chest loosened for the first time in weeks, as if an invisible chain had been cut. He closed the envelope slowly as tears of joy escaped his eyes. Jaden returned home excited. He told Catherine to get dressed as they set out to celebrate the good news. They arrived at his favorite restaurant, and Jaden could not take his eyes off her. He called on the waiter to take their order. When the waiter froze mid-sentence, his pen hovering over the notepad as his eyes widened. "Annie," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. Catherine's hand stopped halfway to her glass. Her entire body went rigid, her chest tightening as if a hand had gripped her lungs. Jaden glanced between them, his brows furrowed as he asked the waiter what he just called her. The waiter stammered for a moment and began to speak. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I know her. Her name is Annie, and I used to work in her father's mansion." Jaden looked up at him, shocked to realize that Catherine was from a wealthy family. Catherine sat there silent, her glass trembled in her hand as fragments of memory began to pierce through the fog of her mind like shards of broken glass. She closed her eyes, gripping the edge of the table as the memories came flooding back. "I remember," she said to Jaden, who leaned closer in shock. "What do you remember, Catherine?" he asked as tears welled in her eyes, her voice breaking into a soft confession. "After my father died, I noticed that my mother began to hate me," she whispered, her gaze distant. "Every man who came near her, friends, suitors, even business partners, would always glance at me, not because I wanted it, not because I encouraged it, but because I looked like her, a younger version of her, and my mother could not stand it." Jaden's brows furrowed, and she continued to speak, her fingers gripping his hand as if he was her lifeline. "After my father died, she grew worse. She said I had cursed her life, stolen the only men who ever cared for her. So, one night, after a party at the mansion, she came into my room. She said if I stayed another day under her roof, she would ruin me. She dragged me out by my hair, barefoot, and threw me onto the street and locked the gate." Catherine's lips quivered as another tear slid down her cheek. "I had nowhere else to go, no one to turn to, until your mother saw me on the streets and decided to help. This was a few weeks before she died." Jaden froze, his heart thudding in his chest. "My mother?" he asked Catherine, who nodded her head as she continued to speak. "She found me outside the church near Victoria Island. I was shivering, my feet bleeding. She took me in. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't care who I was. She didn't care about my last name. All she did was treat me like her own daughter. She gave me food, clothes, and even warmth." Her hand went to her chest and she clutched it as if trying to hold back the ache. "For the first time in my life, I felt loved and safe." Jaden felt his throat tighten as she continued. "She told me stories about you, how busy you were, how hard you worked. She said you are so much like your father, always chasing the world, forgetting to slow down. But she never said it with bitterness. She only smiled and prayed for you every night." Annie's tears flowed freely now, her voice trembling as she clutched Jaden's sleeve. "The day before she died, she called me to her bedside. She made me promise that if she left, I'd keep her memory alive and never let her grave fall into ruin. She said that if my son can't come, you must. At least one of you should sit with me. I don't want to be a lonely ghost," she said as they both laughed, not knowing that she was going to die the next morning. "Your mother died because of me. My mom's thugs stormed her house as they tried to take me away. Your mother stood in their way and they pushed her hard against the wall. She collapsed before my eyes," Catherine whispered, her voice breaking as tears poured down her face. "I begged them to call an ambulance, but they laughed in my face, saying that if I dared to scream, they would finish what they started. Your mother was clutching her chest, gasping for air, and still, with her last breath, she told me to run. She said, 'Don't let them take you. Run and leave.' And then she was gone." Jaden's world froze. The sound of the restaurant faded, replaced by the thunder of his own heartbeat. His jaw tightened, his hands trembling on the table. "Are you saying my mother died because of your mother?" Catherine nodded, her shoulders shaking. "Yes, my mother sent them. She hated that I was living with another woman. Even more, that I had found peace." She thought your mother was stealing me away to keep me from serving her punishment. She wanted me to suffer on the streets and was furious when she heard that your mother had shielded me in her home. Your mother died protecting me, and although my mother locked me up for months, I found my way out and rushed to her graveside to fulfill my promise. That was the first day that you saw me. I ran because I thought that you were one of my mother's dogs. Little did I know that you are the son of the woman who showed me love and kindness when my own mother cast me away. I tried to tell your mother that I should leave, but she insisted I stay. She said that no child deserves to be haunted by their own blood, and because of me she died. Jaden's hand curved into fist, the vein in his forearm bulging as the weight of Catherine's words settled like stones in his chest. His mother, the only person who had ever truly loved him, was gone, not by accident, but because of Catherine's mother. He took a long breath as he began to speak. Your mother killed my own mother, he said, his voice steady, despite the storm that was raging inside of him. Catherine lowered her eyes, her tears streaming freely as she spoke. Jaden, she won't stop. If she finds out I'm alive, she'll finish what she started. She's so powerful, and I don't even know why she hates me so much. It's more than jealousy. It's as if she wants me erased completely. Jaden took her trembling hand and locked his gaze with hers. Then, we are going to find out, and we are not going to run this time. We are going to end this, he said to Catherine, who thanked him for not hating her. Within 48 hours, Jaden had made some calls to the same people who he used to win billion-dollar deals, private investigators, former intelligence operatives, as well as forensic accountants. They dug into every shadow of Catherine's mother's life, and what they uncovered was far darker than either of them expected. Hidden within old hospital records, as well as legal documents, a horrifying truth emerged. Catherine wasn't just her mother's daughter, she was her twin sister's child. Years ago, Catherine's mother had a twin sister, Isabella, who was the family's golden child, wealthy, beautiful, and adored. But when her twin sister Isabella became pregnant out of wedlock, their parents threatened to cut her off completely. Isabella died giving birth to Catherine, who she was told to care for. She ended up marrying the man who got Isabella pregnant because of his wealth and lived her life as Catherine's mother. From that moment, Catherine became the living reminder of her sister who she so hated. The sister who everyone loved and believed was better than her. She wasn't just jealous, Jaden said as he showed Catherine the evidence. She blamed you for everything. She saw your face, and all she could see was Isabella, the sister whose choices she claimed destroyed her. She didn't just want you gone, Catherine. She wanted to erase Isabella's bloodline forever. All this time, she hated me for something I did not choose, for being born. Jaden's eyes hardened, and she sent a hitman to make sure you never live long enough to understand why. The investigators found the man who had run Catherine down. He was already in hiding, but when captured, he confessed everything. Catherine's mother had paid him double to confirm her death. He and his partner lied, telling her that Catherine did not survive the accident, believing her problem was gone. Catherine's mother grew careless, leaving a trail of bribes and offshore accounts for Jaden and his team to follow. 2 weeks later, Jaden stood beside Catherine in a private courtroom as her mother was led in, her hands cuffed, her expression still cold and unrepentant. The evidence was irrefutable: conspiracy, assault, attempted murder, and indirect responsibility for the death of Jaden's mother. The court sentenced her to life in prison, and her empire transferred to Catherine, who was her only family. As the guards led her away, Catherine's mother spat venom one last time. You should have died like Isabella. You should have never been born. Catherine stood still as tears burned in her eyes. But when she felt Jaden's hand slide into hers, steady and warm, she found the strength to speak. And yet I lived, and now I will live free. For Isabella, for myself, and for the woman who died protecting me. Her mother's glare faltered as the heavy doors closed behind her. Outside the courtroom, Catherine turned to Jaden, her body trembling from the weight of it all. It's over, isn't it? She asked Jaden, who cupped her face gently, his thumb wiping away a tear from her eyes. It's over. She can't touch you again. And I swear, Catherine, I'll make sure no one ever does. For the first time in years, Catherine felt the crushing weight lift from her chest. She looked up at Jaden, the man who she fell deeply in love with when her memory was gone. She still loved him now and could not wait to see what life had in store for them. As they walked away, hand in hand, Jaden knew that he had found his own, the woman who not only brought joy to his heart, but also brought meaning to his life. He proposed to her weeks later, not in one of the lavish hotels he owned, or on a private beach in Dubai. Jaden proposed to her in a place that had changed both of their lives forever, his mother's grave. Jaden led Catherine to the quiet cemetery where his mother's gravestone gleamed, cleaned and adorned with fresh lilies. For the first time in years, Jaden felt complete peace standing there. He turned to Catherine, his hands trembling slightly as he reached into his pocket. "This is where I first saw you," he said softly, bleeding, broken, yet so full of devotion for a woman who meant everything to me. "You honored her when I didn't. You loved her even when you had no reason to. And because of you, I finally found my heart again." Catherine's eyes glistened as Jaden went down on one knee. "I lost so much before you, Catherine, but you are everything I didn't know I needed. Will you be my wife? Not because I saved you, but because you saved me," he asked Catherine, who nodded through tears, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Yes, Jaden, 1,000 times yes." As they stood there happy, Jaden felt his mother approve. The joy in his heart knew no bounds as he looked into the eyes of the woman who meant everything to him. Jaden, in that moment, was thankful to his mother for bringing him joy even from her grave. The lessons to be learned from this story is that true love and loyalty often come from the most unexpected places, and the people we overlook can be the ones who heal us the most. Wealth, power, and status mean little when compared to compassion and courage, and sometimes the pain and betrayals we face are what leads us to the people destined to change our lives. Most importantly, it reminds us to cherish those who truly care for us while they are alive, because in the end, love and the bonds we create, not money, are what gives life meaning. I hope you enjoyed the story.